Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of Saved by the Bellerin, the Arsenal football podcast here on the Sports Talk Line Network. Joining you from the United States, I'm Raphael, joined again, as we are every week, well, not every week, but certainly this week, by my full UK contingent, starting to my left, Sam.
Hello, mate. How are we?
All right. And then below him, if you're moving down the television dial, your computer dial or your phone dial, is Ryan. Welcome, Ryan.
Hello, mate. I'm pretty excited about tonight.
We have a lot to talk about today. And, of course, down at the bottom, but certainly not literally at the bottom, figuratively speaking, we have Dean. Welcome, Dean.
Hello, mate. I finally see my icon showing up on the screen now. Yay. Hope everyone's having a good night.
Again, we have a lot to discuss. Gabriel, obviously, we'll get back to him in just a few seconds, but we can also talk about outgoings. We can also talk about Aubameyang, talk about the new kit. A lot of issues, a lot of things up in the air. Things are still up in the air. But again, the question, the issue, it seems to Arsenal are hanging over the finish line, but the tape hasn't broken yet, is the transfer of Gabriel Magalh to Arsenal from Lille. Ryan, I'm going to bring you in. Again, a lot of discussion. You know, we saw the week, the Italian press have one narrative. The French press have had a different narrative. We've talked about for weeks how this has followed the traditional or the now familiar pattern of this player is going to Napoli, and then, you know, he winds up at Arsenal. We saw it with Leno. We saw it with Torreira. We saw it last summer with Pepe. We saw it with Kieran Tierney last summer as well. You know, everybody assumed he was going to Napoli. All the Italian press, there's a gentleman's agreement. All this melodramatic terms. There's a gentleman's agreement. Will Arsenal be decent? Arsenal's got the big tweedy mustache and the hat, and they're the rake, and they're going to steal the beautiful girl away. But we've talked about this. The person who doesn't get a voice in all of these stories is the player, and it sounds like he's chosen Arsenal. Lots of stories, most notably, I think Jason Burt was talking last night that an agreement, other sources in the UK now, and we know UK is usually a lagging indicator, but there's so much, so many stories accumulated. It's not official, but it's almost official. You've been doing some research into how he gets here, what the process is. I'm sure everybody who's watching us on the pod has lots of questions. If you can tell us what you found.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, this transfer is taking the route as normal. It's gone from Arsenal being dead quiet, unnamed Premier League club, usually Arsenal. Mm-hmm. And then it's usually the three clubs that are always against us: United, PSG, and what's the other team?
It was Everton this time.
Napoli. Everton this time, yeah. And Napoli. So it's taken the same course, and the players supposedly chosen Arsenal, which reputable sources in France have said, L'Equipe, Téléfoot, and I think it's France Football that all said that he's chosen Arsenal. Jason Burt, who's very, very reliable for French players and French clubs, has said he's agreed to sign for Arsenal on a 5-year contract. So I have no reason to disbelieve that. And then the usual sprinkling of the Arsenal are in disarray, they might lose this player to another club happens. Happened with Ozil in 2013. Mm-hmm. On deadline day, we agreed a deal for Ozil, and then suddenly PSG and Man United are back in the scene. Yeah, get out of it.
And here they are, right? In the last hour or two, United has made a push, PSG has made a push, right.
And it happened with Lacazette when he signed from Lyon. United were involved. Last season, it was Pepe with United and PSG battling it out with Arsenal, blah, blah, blah. We know how that story went. But I also want to say, someone mentioned it to me just now before we came on, Saliba as well. Arsenal had agreed a deal for Saliba, and then suddenly Spurs joined in.
They're going to hijack this, right? And that went on for 2 or 3 days, right?
It's usually either The journalists don't know anything, so they're making things up. They're trying to keep the story running along, or it's an agent wanting more agent fees. I'm starting to believe it's more journalists trying to get more clicks, more keep the story running. And as you mentioned, I did some research on how Gabriel could get over here. Because obviously with the UK, the quarantine rules are you have to, any travellers coming into the country, you have to quarantine for 14 days. Well, that's good. There's a few options that we have. We can meet in a neutral country that is non-exempt or exempt from having to quarantine when you get here. So we can fly to Portugal or Germany and meet him there, get everything all done and dusted, sign the contract, do all the photos, all the media kind of stuff. And then he comes into England and quarantines for 14 days, but the deal is done. Or he can have his medical in France and then come over here, quarantine 14 days. We can do all the contracts by emailing it over and have a video witness. I was told you could have a video witness because I did some research and it said that a person from the organization has to be in attendance when a contract is signed. And I learned this from when LeBron James signed with the Lakers. So I did some research into that and it said that a person from the team or the organization have to be in attendance for a contract signing, which is binary. So a long period of a contract.
Does that apply to the UK as well?
Yeah.
As a US player, but it applies across the board?
Yeah, it applies in every sport.
Okay.
If you sign for more than a temporary contract, someone has to be in attendance. But you can have a virtual attendee via video call due to the circumstances. So we could literally be doing this with him right now. So like Houssem Aouar, not Raul, he don't work for Arsenal anymore. Edu and Arteta just be on a Zoom call with Gabriel as he's signing and whatnot. So we do have quite a few options, or we just make him wait out for 14 days. But
as you said, I want to keep this on. Right? You were talking that first alternative. He could be in a country where there's not quarantine. You mentioned Portugal. There's a big event going on there right now. Is there not?
Yeah, the Champions League, which is a small matter at the moment. But I think it's very possible where we sign him before he actually comes to England, so he doesn't have to sit in a hotel. Because I don't think Arsenal want him sat in a hotel for 14 days.
Yeah,
think in his head, because then that might just be like
that does create that vacuum where another team could swoop in and take it away, right?
Not only that, it might cause doubt in the player's head, and we certainly don't want that. So sign him before and whatnot.
But I want to stay with the stories. Again, point we want to make to the people who are watching, right? We keep talking about the fact that if you've been reading the Italian press, and certainly these stories of Napoli, and they're making another push, and then we saw today United is coming in. All of them talk about agreements between the clubs, and we keep going back to the fact that everything that's certainly come out of the French press says the player has made the decision, and it's his choice. And when you isolate that, it seems all of those stories say he's chosen Arsenal Football Club.
Yeah. And I just think Italian media are that very, very loyal friend that will back you in every single fight, whether you're outnumbered or not, whether you're going to lose. And they're just like in your corner. That's all I think that is. And yeah, I saw it today. Lille's president, Gerard Lopez, said on TalkSport, Napoli is a very high interest of him, and so are Arsenal. And when pushed, he didn't want to say too much, but that said a lot, if that makes sense. It was more, he said the same thing for Pepe. He brought it up today. Sure. He said, we pushed Pepe towards Arsenal because they accepted a lower fee. So I think we've got a very good relationship with Lille, so there's no reason why they would do that to us.
To wind this up, and again, it's a complicated story, and let's be firm, it's not official, right? But it's all but official. But again, going back to the player, going back to the team, we keep seeing agent talk, owners, club presidents, and they all say, it seems they walk right up to the line and then they won't confirm. Is this evidence of agreements? We talk about a gentleman agreement between Napoli and Lille. Is this evidence of some kind of agreement with Arsenal and Lille, in your opinion?
I think we talked about it in the group chat. Me and Dean spoke about it explicitly in the group chat, saying that Arsenal usually, when they do transfers, they make teams sign a non-disclosure act, which means they cannot not talk about it at all. So if I came to you, you work for Arsenal or Lille, and I came to you and said, do you have any information about this transfer? You legally can't talk about any details of that transfer, which is why any transfer from Arsenal is usually dead silent. Because everyone's like, oh, why are they not announcing it? There's no news today. It's so quiet. That's because Arsenal like it like that, because they don't want to get burnt as they have done in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's very, very likely Arsenal have signed a non-disclosure act with Lille, in my opinion.
All right. Dean, let's bring you in. Let's talk about another story that's following a similar pattern, a lot closer to home. It seems like it's 99 at this point, 0.99% done. That's the extension for Aubameyang. Today, we have to be living under a rock. Arsenal released their new road kit, the marble kit. They're basing it off the marble at Highbury. Very flashy, very impressive intro video from Adidas. And, lo and behold, on its official Twitter feed, the club puts a picture of Aubameyang in it with Auba and the lightning bolts and everything. Again, the tease extends, but he hasn't signed it yet. What do we make of this? Where do we stand? Again, it's getting a little tiresome.
Well, if you think the teasing's getting tiresome, just before we came on, or just when we started coming live today, they've just done the same thing on their Instagram feed with that same photo of Auba and put the captain or our captain or something on there. So I mean, them or Aubameyang may as well just come out and announce that it's practically done and dusted, and we're just waiting for the formalities, but there's nothing to worry about. They've literally put captain with his photo in next season's kit. To me, that all but says it's done. I mean, you're not doing this if suddenly there's going to be a statement for the fans a la RVP. You're not doing this if he's suddenly going to say, I'm really sorry, guys, but I don't feel we're going in the same direction as Mikel Arteta, or my vibe isn't the same as Mikel. This is done. He is staying. You don't do this. You don't have your dad and your brother and everyone in the Arsenal kit partying it up in Arsenal colours if you're not
family,
staying.
Right? No,
exactly.
Sad.
No, his kids and everything. I mean, this literally is, you talk about in football and transfers and whatnot, this being the world's most open secret or the worst kept secret. This has probably got to be it for Arsenal to date. I mean, I'm super excited. I am just hoping beyond hope that the sort of reveal video or the reveal kind of thing is going to be massive now, because I mean, they've just led us down this path. And I'm just a little bit worried it's going to be so anticlimactic because we all just know it's coming. But I'm still excited. I can't wait.
I trust Adidas. I trust the club. Again, the reveal. If you haven't seen it yet, go watch that video reveal for the road kit. It's dazzling. It's eye candy. I mean, choose your metaphor. It's quite impressive. All right, Sam. Let's finally. You've been very patiently waiting. A lot of other moves. Obviously, everybody's focused on Gabriel because he's the most immediate one, but Champions League is over for Atletico Madrid, probably the linchpin player of the summer. Let's talk about Thomas Partey. There have been stories in the Spanish press since this last round of Champions League play concluded that an agreement has been reached with Arsenal. Again, leaks, nothing official, but it's kind of, as Dean talked about Aubameyang, it's kind of an open secret that Arsenal want Partey. Partey, it seems, wants Arsenal. Very similar to what we've heard in the Gabriel story. His home club is trying to hold on to him, but again, this one seems to finally be, the wheels finally seem to be spinning here in the right direction.
Yeah, and as we've been saying all the time on the pod, is we had to wait for Atletico's Champions League to finish, as you said, and the fact of the matter is that we're still exploring avenues with Atletico, because obviously, as we discussed on Tuesday's pod regarding their furlough situation,
Right.
they're only going to be able to spend 25% of any money that they get in. So it's in their best interests to negotiate previously in terms of what players they want to swap from us. Because as we've again said on the pod, there's been multiple players that they want to swap or are interested in for swaps. So going down that avenue is unfortunately going to drag this out a little bit. But as it's also been reported that if push comes to shove, Arsenal will trigger that buyout clause. Now, as we've also discussed, that buyout clause wouldn't come directly from Arsenal. It would be to a third-party agency or directly to the player, for the player to then buy out their contract. And then effectively that money then goes straight to the Spanish FA. The Spanish FA then distribute that off to Atletico Madrid. So with English reports today, Sammy Mockwell coming out and saying that we've agreed a salary with Partey. It's all heading in the right direction for us. So the fact of the matter is, unfortunately, with all transfers, they are going to take a little bit of time, but it is happening, and it's happening in the right directions for us. So as fans, we've just got to be a little bit more patient, but ultimately it will happen. And also, we all know that the season's going to be starting very soon. So the club will be accelerating their negotiations for the players that we're looking to get in. So I know people want things done immediately. We're just going to have to possibly wait a couple of weeks on it.
Let's stick with that. Let's stick with timetables of setting expectations or helping people manage their expectations. Because as we said, we talk about players, their seasons ends and usually they go on 2-week holidays. Partey allegedly had an injury, and we kind of joked about this because we see this with transfers. The mystery injury happens, and then the player doesn't play for his old club, and suddenly he's at his new club. It was the phantom injury. It seems that he was injured because he did not play for Atletico in their Champions League qualifier, and so he's had a little bit extra time. But then we have to take into consideration quarantine, as we were discussing with the Gabriel story. As Ryan pointed out, that's probably not an issue for him. And then if you recall a few days ago, if you've been following the Partey story, when the English press finally caught on to it, yes, Thomas Partey could be coming. The qualifier, the hurdle they threw in the way is, but he wants 200,000 a week, and this could be a stumbling block. But as you said, that part seems to be ironed out. So whatever these impediments are, they all seem to be getting knocked down.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact of the matter is, when people talk about Arsenal transfers, there's always some sort of obstacle that's thrown in the way. Regardless what it is, whether it comes from Italy, Spain, England, the journalists will find something to put Arsenal down in. And the fact of the matter is that the club don't speak to journalists unless they're putting out a blanket press briefing. So a lot of the Arsenal coverage is guesswork from journalists. And we're seeing that at the moment with the Gabriel situation, with the Thomas Partey situation. There's a lot of guesswork going about. But ultimately, if you read between the lines, you can clearly see what is going on. And you can see who's the reliable people and who aren't. Because the ones that put out a bit of information and then don't bang on about it can be the more reliable ones, but the ones that constantly churn it and recycle, you just got to look at them and go, not too sure what your end game is here. But ultimately, it's a case of just the club don't speak to them. That's what it is. The club doesn't speak to the journalists. Journalists are trying to get clicks for their respective publications, and we all know how volatile the Arsenal fan base can be if bad news comes out. So, again, it's about managing expectations, hence why people are here. So we're able to do that for yourselves. So it's just a case of, just let it play out and it will happen.
Okay. Ryan, okay, so we've talked about Partey, we've talked about Gabriel. Let's bring you back in because we've talked about the short menu, the short core is the phrase we've been using here on the pod for the last couple of weeks. So Ryan, let's talk about the other position. We focused on Coutinho for a long time, but then now the name Houssem Aouar, we kind of pined for him. We thought, wow, this would be a wonderful player to approach, right? And then news comes out that Arsenal actually were interested in this player, had made an inquiry for the player. The initial report was that it had been knocked down, that there was Matteo Guendouzi plus cash to Lyon, and that was knocked down. And then we all said on the last pod, well, Lyon's still playing. Part of this may be they don't want distractions, same as with the Coutinho story. When that came out and Arsenal did that U-turn and said there's not happening, we thought, okay, too much information came out. They didn't want the parties. They didn't want Bayern Munich getting distracted or getting upset. They didn't want the player getting upset. Same with Aouar. But again, as we know, Lyon went out yesterday. Their season is over. And lo and behold, today, a revision of that initial story saying that an offer was made and that it was not rejected. It was just not addressed. I mean, what does that mean to you? How do you interpret that? It looks like, and also there's the other really tantalizing piece to that story. They said Arsenal is the only club so far that have inquired about him, and Lyon's president said he expects the player to move this summer. You start adding these numbers up. Take us through this.
So to talk about the report on our offer being ignored, we'll say it. Not that it was rejected, it was just ignored. Not because it was a bad offer, because 30 million euros plus Matteo Guendouzi is not a bad offer. In the grand scheme of things, he may have a bad attitude and bad behaviour and whatnot, but he's still a very talented player. And I think they've ignored it because they don't want Aouar to get distracted, because they still are they were in the semi-final of the Champions League, which the biggest game they've played in 10 years. So to keep their best player quiet, less distracted, don't mention it. We won't even look at it. Don't open the email. That kind of thing. And if we do get a chance to sign Aouar and it happens, I might have to take a very long cold shower.
The initial bid apparently was, we've been kicking around. Arsenal, as a story, Arsenal valued Matteo Guendouzi somewhere between 35 and 40 million. We look at Aouar, it looks like Lyon has valued him somewhere around 60. You hear 70, but 60 million pounds seems to be the figure that they sort out. Right. So when we put those two numbers together, we're figuring somewhere around maybe 20 million plus Guendouzi, and then they will haggle over the difference. The initial report was 25 million, I think it was euros, plus Guendouzi. It doesn't sound like the clubs are that far apart.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think it was 65 million euros and 60 million pounds, as you said. We value Guendouzi as 35, 40 million. I think if we up our bid by 10 million, they can't say no, because they're not playing in any European football. COVID has happened. They're not very good financially right now. So we can take advantage of that. We say, well, we'll give you this player who's potentially a 40 million pound player. You can do what you want with him after a season. You sell him on, make a profit on him. We'll just take your best player for 30 million pound cash. But what also said in the article was that Man City and Juventus were also interested. I think what's happened is Lyon want to create a bidding war to get as much money as possible.
Sure.
But then you think about it logically, Juventus can't even afford Alexandre Lacazette right now. They're trying to palm off their cast-offs to us for him. So how are they going to pay 60 million in cash for Aouar? It's just not going to happen. And then City, they don't need anyone in that position. And I think it was maybe David Ornstein that said City have more interest in Jack Grealish than Aouar. So you think about it, if they're not going to come to the table, we've got a clear path at Aouar here. And as I said, if we can raise the money by selling some deadwood, we don't bin all the dusty players we don't want anymore. Get that 30 million in cash, give them Guendouzi, and we may have a godly midfield.
Now let's stay with you, okay? Let's stay with this, because again, this is the probably the biggest, the most mouth-watering possibility. Now that it looks like Gabriel's close, now that it looks like Auba's close, it looks like Partey. You know, we're exhausted from that, but it looks like that one's possible. This is the new one. This is the fresh one. For people who are kind of skeptical of it, and there is some pushback as we see the way the press deals with this, is give everybody some background knowledge, some backfill. A month ago, when Guendouzi was in Mikel Arteta's doghouse after the Brighton game, you know, and he'd stopped playing, and we're all wondering what's going to happen. What's going to happen to him? Initial stories came from the French press that said Lyon are interested in Guendouzi. They anticipate Aouar could leave in the summer, and he's a player they have targeted. So, you know, it was a bit surprising when we saw last week the stories that said, okay, Arsenal have offered him, and they said, oh, you saw some reports that said, oh no, Lyon said we don't want him. I mean, they're the ones who initiated the interest. This just seems like gamesmanship, at least to my eyes.
Yeah, I agree. Unless they genuinely just want cash for a while and to reinvest it into their team, which then we can just send Guendouzi on loan to Villarreal with obligation to join up with Emery again. We say, oh, you pay €5 million loan fee and then a 40 million obligation. We can use that 40 million because it's guaranteed. Mm-hmm. And put it into cash for a while, which then makes up the 60 million that they want for him. So either way, we're good. We can afford him. So I think it's a big possibility that we could see Aouar sign for Arsenal.
All right, Dean, let's bring you back. You've been waiting a little bit. With all this talk of incomings, there's also going to be talk of outgoings, right? Arsenal, we keep hearing, oh, Arsenal doesn't have a lot of money. We've been saying it in the pod for a long time. Arsenal can bring in anybody they want to because they have at least 150 million in player assets they can sell, right? And we've just been waiting for that wheel to turn, and it really started to turn this week. A couple of days ago, we saw, in the last 48 hours, stories that Napoli, of all teams, have come in for Socrates. And there was reports in the Greek press yesterday that the deal was 90% complete. I don't know if that's true or not. We haven't been able to verify that. But there's clearly an interest. There's clearly a market for Socrates. We heard a couple of days ago that Juve has agents. They might still be in London, who are in London to talk about Lacazette. And we know Arsenal value him somewhere around £35 million. So there's two potential targets outgoing. Lucas Torreira's been on the map. He's been all over the map. And, interestingly enough, the team he's been most linked with recently has been Atletico Madrid. So we do wonder, is he part of a swap deal? It seems Arsenal would love to have him as a swap deal. Atletico may want to do different deals, but it's clear they're interested in that player, especially if they lose Thomas Partey. It seems that one's just getting going. There's 4 or 5 other players that we could throw in there.
There's, as we discussed, and we keep mentioning it, there's definitely a lot of assets being sort of built since Arteta came in to sort of send away now that sort of may not fit the new mold, may not fit the new system. As you said, the whole thing here with Socrates, Napoli and I think Roma both looking at him. Like I said, as you said, Torreira, as you said, there seems to be a market for all these players. Not to mention on the homegrown soil as well. Also a couple of homegrown players such as Fulham looking at Callum Chambers, Leeds possibly looking at Rob Holding, as we mentioned those before. There's a lot that could happen with Lucas Torreira. As you mentioned, there's a few clubs in Italy sort of still looking at him, including Roma. There's Atletico Madrid. It seems to be, and I've noticed this with a couple of our players, the same clubs looking at sort of different players. So Atletico Juve with Lacazette, Atletico Roma with Torreira, Roma Napoli with Socrates. So there seems to be a little.
Let me interrupt you for a second. Another club with rather deep pockets, PSG and Guendouzi too. Right?
Oh yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, I mean Guendouzi, I didn't sort of think to mention him at the moment. But yeah, obviously PSG, that would look the likelier one if we were going to go down the cash route. Otherwise, obviously, I discussed on Tuesday, if we can get Villarreal to do the obligation of 30 million, then we could do that there. And I think one of the lads mentioned it previously, that if that were the case and we got an obligation, we could then spend that 30 million knowing it was incoming next year. We have got a very good market, in my opinion, especially now for players that some fans and some people deem very fringe and lesser players, definitely not valid for the Arsenal system right now and not working for the league. And yet we can seemingly offload them to other clubs with a decent return. Not like we did under Wenger, for example, when we had those lesser players that we weren't getting anything for them. So it does look like we can still get a decent amount of cash, if not swaps for players. And obviously COVID has put us in that position. But it is looking good. It is looking good.
And yes, and it seems a very strange, but a very pleasant. The pattern seems to be coming together. We're fearful that they want targets and they can't move players out. That doesn't seem to be the case. And it seems that the valuations that we've assumed would be there, that the papers are putting out there, do seem to be holding. So that's all good news. But with that in mind, let's go back to you, Sam. And this is for all of you. It's kind of a quick round. We need to speed things up a little bit here, but. We've been talking about what we call the short core. At first in the summer when we were playing with fantasy games, kind of the football manager mode on, we thought, they could send 8-9 players out and they could bring 7-8 players in. But, as time goes on and the season's, barreling towards us, that we have to be a little bit more realistic. And we settled on, let's get about 4 core, possibly elite players. Willian is in. It looks like Gabriel could be the next. Aubameyang staying, that's critical. And then if they can get Partey and Aouar in, that's the short core. Maybe Coutinho, we've kicked that one around. And we talked last week about, does that satisfy you? I want to ask you guys, are we still in that framework and that mindset, or might we go a little broader than a four core, shall we say?
I think for the time being, yes, you've got to be very happy with that short core. But I think as the window progresses, there will be a few surprise options that will be thrown up, and that could then look into sending some of the youngsters out on loan. But ultimately, for the interim right now, I believe you've got to be happy with that as a transfer window. Maybe if Lacazette goes out, you're looking at bringing in another attacker. We've also said about the Celtic striker, Eduardo. So, yeah, I think we've definitely got to be happy with this so far.
All right, Ryan, similar for you. I mean, would 4 satisfy? I think the fans would be thrilled with those 4, but is that enough? With a big season coming on with multiple competitions. Is that going to be enough?
I believe so. I'm going to go on a limb here and say, get those 4 players in, get them integrated into the system, and then rely on our youth in the cup competitions. They are good enough. I said it about Nketiah. I say it about Smith Rowe. These guys, they're very talented. They can handle their own. And now they've had a year experience in the first team. I don't think we need too many signings to disrupt their development. Because obviously, if we sign another striker, Nketiah is going to go down the pecking order. And we need him for when Aubameyang does eventually go, to be firing on all cylinders with another striker. So I don't want to buy someone that's like 25, 26 now, and then stunt the growth of Nketiah, if that makes sense. So the same with Willock and Saka and Martinelli. We've got these kids and they're really good. So as I said previously, get those 5 elite players in your team, build around them, have good players around them. But I don't think we need much more than 4 or 5 this summer.
Okay. Dean, you get final crack at this one. Same question.
All right, sorry. As I've been trying to do the chat here, the pod was cutting out. Sorry, I've missed everything. I got Sam's answer, Ryan's answer. What was the question? I'm sorry, everything was cutting out on me here.
With the short core, is that satisfactory
Yes.
to you?
Okay. So yeah, for the 4 or 5, yeah, I think it is definitely. I mean, I might as well just say I completely echo what Ryan said. I mean, I'll go back to everything that he said before and everything you said before. Get 3 or 4. You know, we discussed it last week. We discussed it Saturday. 3 or 4 elite players in, build around them. And I agree with Ryan as well that I do think our young lads can definitely do the domestics. I definitely feel they're good enough to do that. We've got a load of guys coming up from with Baldy and Mertesacker as well that I feel in the next year even are going to make some strides. So build with the few elite players in areas we need covering right now. Build from that, build around them. But short core, as you say, I feel we're good to go. I don't think, we all said this before, I don't think we need a major sort of knockdown and rebuild, just a slight entanglement and a slight sort of restructuring. But I definitely feel that's definitely, I do apologize for not catching what you asked, but yeah, definitely, that's my answer.
All right. So again, we want to stay with this. I mean, it could be that they go with the short core. I'm of the opinion that there are going to be a lot of outgoings. I mean, what we're hearing at the beginning right now, what the names we're hearing right now, Torreira, Lacazette, Guendouzi, that this is only beginning. We haven't talked about Holding. We haven't talked about Chambers. Kolasinac could be a possible outgoing to add to this. What happens when Mustafi comes back? Does the club keep him? Does the club try to, cash in on him and perhaps go look for a second center back? I guess everything depends on Gabriel. You got to get 1 in before you look to 2. But, if they have that 8 to 9 outgoings, this is maybe not a question, but a teaser, because I'm noticing, I want to say we have a lot of new fans today, and we want to welcome all of you. But, we're going to bring you into this because, again, we do this every Tuesday, and during the the transfer market, we've been doing it every Tuesday and Thursday, and we're going to continue it on. But, we have we're going to unveil this today. We have a big program planned for transfer deadline day. We're going to go all day. We know you guys have watched Sky Sports Deadline Day with Jim White. That's tired. Spend it with us. We're lining up guests. We're going to follow this. Final question for all of you guys. If there is a big outgoing, if we see those 8-9 players, if Arsenal just decide these players we've identified a long list of players that are not in Mikel Arteta's plans, and priority 1 after we get this core in is to get these guys out. Might we see nearer deadline day, which is not that far off? It's October 5th, I believe. 1 or 2 surprises coming in the 11th hour. Sam, who might they be? I'm going to start with you.
Well, who may they be?
I know one name that you're very high on.
Yeah, I'm going to go. Obviously, I think Coutinho will be one later on. A lot of things with him is going to be dependent on when he gets back to Barcelona and meets Ronald Koeman. So I think with him,
hold on. So you think they could go Aouar and Coutinho? Just plain,
yes.
Just put it out there. Wow. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Because you've got to think about it. We're looking at possibly playing 2, maybe 3 different formations next season. So with both players, they both fit in to what's needed. As we discussed on Tuesday's pod, the differences between Coutinho and Aouar and how they could potentially play in the same team as well. I think dependent on what happens with Granit Xhaka, I know that Arteta loves him. He had interviews saying that he wants to stay here. But I think the club will look at it. If we do get a big offer for him, then potentially he could go out the door. But that's a very big if at this point in time. And if that does happen, I think that Mark Rocker should be the replacement for him. But ultimately, I think we could possibly see a backup right winger if Reece Nelson was to go out on loan. But again, big ifs at this point in time. But we all know the transfer window, lots of twists and turns. So just have to wait and see for this at this point in time for me.
All right, same question for you, Ryan, but I'm going to throw another name in the mix because I'd be remiss if we didn't bring him up because he was very important to Arsenal's run-in. I'm talking about Dani Ceballos. With so many names kicked around, he seems to get lost in the shuffle. He seems to, that's a mistake we do a lot, but Mikel Arteta certainly hasn't forgotten Ceballos. And of course, stories where he wants him back. He really wants him back.
Yeah.
You think that's one of the later moves that they try to bring him back on loan one more time closer to the deadline?
I don't think that would be close to the deadline. I think that will happen as soon as he gets back to Madrid and tells them, listen, I don't want to be here. I want to be back in London. Because if you look at his Twitter profile, if you look at his Instagram profile, he's still got Arsenal player in his bio. He's saying happy birthday to Arsenal players. Like today with Joe Willock, he said, I'll see you soon. So
I did not know
think,
that. Okay.
Yeah, he posted a story today wishing Joe Willock a happy birthday, and it said, I'll see you soon. And he posted one yesterday where Arsenal fans singing his chant in the stadium.
Okay.
So all signs point to me say he wants to sign for us permanently. He wants to stay here. And I think that's a pretty easy deal to seal. If Madrid respect his wishes of not wanting to stay there, I think that deal will be pretty easy to complete. And not only that, I think our surprise might be a captain from Aston Villa, number 10, Mr. Jack Grealish. I'm just going to throw his name out there.
Keep that hope alive, right?
Yeah, I'm just going to throw his name.
Even with Aouar, it's like with Sam. I said Coutinho and Aouar. You're still not losing hope on Jack Grealish.
Yeah, because he said rumours the last couple of days that he wants to play for a bigger club. Come on down to London, sir. We can make you into one of the best players in the league.
You've got an ambassador here in Ryan Clayton. All right, Dean, you get the final word. As it's still off, but it's not that far off. Who's your surprise, if you will? Give us one, and how soon or how late?
Okay, does it have to be an incoming?
It can be an outgoing. You can be surprised that way.
Okay, because I know we have discussed the odd kind of talk on this, but I know I've just been, a lot of people believing that a certain smoking Spaniard is definitely on the way out. I'm talking about Hector Bellerin. That's not going to be great.
Explain that. Come on, don't be.
Oh no, there was just a whole thing because he had a little bit of he had a cigarette and he was snapped having a cigarette in Italy today. It just seems it's what they do when they're in Italy. Or Washington Chesney in it and Hector. I just called him the smoking Spaniard because it was the thing that was thrown up today. Which obviously we don't judge that. If he wants to do that, that's up to him.
He's on holiday, right?
Yeah, exactly. He's having he's downtime. It is what it is. Jack did it before. Washex did it before. It is what it is. We don't judge here. But it would be a bit sad if he does end up going. But there's been a few pieces where certain betting companies aren't even putting up certain markets. And I know we don't take stock in that when it comes to that. But it's just very interesting. There's a couple of clubs knocking about for him. I don't think he would. I can't see him leaving. But if there's going to be a surprise, it could be Hector on the way out. And if that's the case, I think we're going to need another backup right back if we don't, or a starting right back if we don't trust Cedric to do that.
Well, in the outgoing, we didn't add him to the math, but if you put him as an outgoing, that's another really big chunk of change given his age. And you think there'd be some fairly big clubs interested in him. All right. We pushed this about 45 minutes. So again, we want to add a lot of new viewers tonight. We want to thank all of you and welcome you to the program. We do this every Tuesday, and I guess during transfer season, we're also doing it every Thursday. Come back and join us. Follow us on the Saved by the Bellerin Twitter feed. If you're not a follower, do so. We appreciate your questions in the chat as we do it live, but also during the week, if something comes in, you want us to address it on the show, let us know. But again, good to have you here. Join us for the journey. We're bullish on the season. We're bullish on this off season. Come back on Tuesday. Hopefully we'll have more concrete news. Everything, again, as we said, still up in the air, but it looks like several important deals are close. And on that note, for me, I'm Raphael, and for my English counterparts, Sam, Ryan, and Dean, we want to say thank you, good night, and see you again soon.
Hector Bellerin, Bellerin, Hector Bellerin. In by Mustafi. Bellerin, brilliant! 2-2. Hector Bellerin, Bellerin, Hector Bellerin. That's a